Hey, I'm going to try to give you a tour of the, let's start with the Canidae. And so this is a wolf, so Canis lupus. And we've seen some of these bones before, but just to review, we've got the nasal bone here, and then the frontal bone. And one thing you'll notice on this wolf is that the parietal bone has been removed, and that's because when you get a wolf roadkill or depredation in this state, because it has been federally endangered, we would do a necropsy. So they'd pull the brain out, and so you would do that. To do that, you'd remove the parietal bones. The parietal bones have been removed in this. But because of that, we have a pretty good window into the brain case, and this structure here is called the cribriform plate, and you'll see it's perforated. You can see the nasal sinuses up here too, but the cribriform plate is an important structure because that's where all the olfactory nerves are entering the brain to the olfactory lobe. So the size of that cribriform plate can tell you a lot about just how much this animal relies on chemical communication. And certainly a wolf relies heavily on chemical communication. We see in the lateral view here, you've got the premaxilla bone with the incisors, large canine with the maxillary bone. Here's the jugal, and here's the squamosal bone here. And then just looking at it, you've got also a large incisive foramina. And the incisive foramina is going to be the opening to the vomeronasal organ, and the size of that is going to tell you how much it relies on pheromone cues. So it's a separate olfactory pathway. So that's going to be here at the suture of the premaxilla and the maxilla, and then you've got the palatine bone here. In the carnivores, you also have one of the structures we want to focus on is called the post-glenoid process of the squamosal bone here, and that's going to be really well defined in hypercarnivores because it's involved with holding in the lower jaw, the articular process of the lower jaw. And then this is the mandibular fossa, where that articular process would sit. Right. So if we compare the wolf, Canis lupus, to the coyote, Canis latrans, this will just give you a little bit of a size comparison here, but the bones are going to be exactly the same, pretty much the same shapes. I'm going to just show you in a wolf. Wolves are one of two families. The Canidae have something called an alisphenoid canal, and it's here. It's a little bit hard to see, but you can see the pin tool is going through a structure in the alisphenoid bone. So if I've got a pin tool like this positioned on the skull, the structure is the alisphenoid canal, but it's on the alisphenoid bone. And that bone is one bone medial from the squamosal. So here's the mandibular fossa. You can usually find a suture, and then one bone in from that suture is the alisphenoid, and that's where you can find a lot of these structures. Okay. I'm just going to move on to two other canids. So the two foxes. And so we have two foxes in Wisconsin. We've got a red fox and we've got a gray fox. And you should be able to tell the difference between these two foxes based on their skull shape. And we'll see if I can do this. It might be too bright. We'll see. So if I turn that, you can see on a gray fox, they have this like little indentation in the frontal bone. And that's, so here's the post-orbital process of the frontal, and they've got this little indentation that the red fox does not have when you look at the red fox. And they also have this very prominent, it's called a parietal ridge. And the parietal ridge on a gray fox is sometimes called lyre shape. It looks like the harp that angels play, is kind of like the way they describe a gray fox. So you're looking for this indentation here that the red fox does not have, and then a very prominent parietal ridge, which again the red fox doesn't have. It's got a little bit of a ridge, but not so much a prominent ridge that the gray fox has. When we look at the lower jaws, there's also a difference, and what we're looking at here is the margin of the lower jaw. So if you follow the margin of a red fox, and you follow it from, here's the angular process, and it's pretty much a straight, nice, smooth margin all the way from the anterior to the posterior. When you look at a gray fox, there's a notch. So here's the angular process. Now there's this notch, and then it kind of follows. So the presence of this notch is indicative of a gray fox, and you don't see that notch in the red fox. All right, so that should do it for the Canidae.